Okay. Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's enjoying the expo so far. My name's Katie Weeks. I'm the editor of EcoStructure magazine, and I am joined right now with Cliff Majersik, who is the executive director of the Institute for Market Transformation. Welcome, Cliff.
Thank you very much, Katie.
So I'm going to dive right in. And now your group, it's a nonprofit group called the Institute for Market Transformation. Can you tell us a little bit about what that does?
Sure. We work on policies to try to advance energy efficiency in buildings and green building more broadly.
Both commercial and residential.
Both commercial and residential, single family and multifamily. We recognize that buildings consume about 40% of the energy in the United States and the world, and we're concerned about all the problems that come from consuming energy, including climate change and energy dependence and the economic impact. And so we focus on ways that we can make buildings more energy efficient that'll be a win for everybody, a win for people by creating jobs and better buildings to live and work in, and a win for the economy, for economic development, and a win for the environment to prevent climate change and to give us cleaner air to protect people's lives from air pollution and problems like that.
So then do you work with all different people that are involved with buildings, architects, builders, contractors, owners, anyone who's involved in that?
That's right. We work on policy. So we are largely involved in developing and implementing laws and advising policymakers, legislators, and others on them. But in that context, it's critically important that we work with all of the stakeholders, architects, engineers, builders, the banks that finance it, the appraisers, the real estate agents, all of these important stakeholders that have a really big role to play in how our real estate markets function, how our buildings get built and operated. And we almost always work in coalition with groups like those to make sure that the policies are working for the stakeholders. All too often, I think policymakers make decisions without really talking to the frontline people that are affected by the decision. Mm-hmm. And some of the value we try to add is by understanding those people, the architects, the engineers that have to live with the decisions, the laws that govern our buildings, that govern construction, that govern design. And we serve as a liaison, often sort of translating from the language of the architect to the language of the policymaker, from the language of the engineer to the language of the underwriter for a loan on a building, those sorts of roles.
So that it's one big dialogue, no matter what the vocabulary that
right.
specific segment's using.
And we try to break down the silos. Lots of times I think bad policy comes from people not talking to each other and not really hearing each other's concerns, and if you get everybody at the table and you translate, then you can come up with good policy that works for the architects, for the engineers, for the economy, and for the environment.
So that kind of leads to my next question, which is this concept of market transformation. And how would you define that? Is it just pushing these small steps, or what qualifies as transformation?
Market transformation is changing business as usual. Market transformation is about making it more profitable to do the right thing. And we're particularly focused on green building and energy efficiency. So it's about permanent change that doesn't require that you have to get a rebate check from a utility or something like that. It's about getting in place policies that change the rules of the road, or getting out information about ways to do things better that are not just better for the environment, but they're better for you as a business or an architect. You'll make more money doing it, and so you'll keep doing it.
Okay. And then can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now? What's your main focus?
Well, we're working in a few different areas, but a big part of our focus is about trying to get architects and everybody involved with buildings rewarded for getting more energy efficient buildings and more green buildings. And obviously there's been great strides that have been made. You see in Energy Star labeled buildings, in LEED certified buildings, there's lower vacancy rates, there's faster lease up. The tenants are often paying more per square foot in rents. When the buildings get sold, they get sold for more per square foot. That's all music to the ears of those building owners. That it's money in their pocket. And ultimately that will flow to being more money in the architect's pocket, because good architects doing good design is how you get these good green buildings. Mm-hmm. So some of the things that we've done are, we just actually came out with a report for appraisers on how do you appraise green building and energy efficiency.
And that's a huge issue.
It is a big issue. There have been problems in the past where even though these green buildings are better, they have lower vacancy, they rent for more. Sometimes the appraisers weren't factoring that into their appraisal. Mm-hmm. They were treating the building as though it was going to have the same rent as an old-fashioned building that wasn't green, wasn't better in any way. And so we worked with the Appraisal Institute, which is the institute that represents appraisers. It's sort of the equivalent of AIA for appraisers.
Right.
And we jointly published this report. It's a 43-page report, so we don't expect most architects will want to read the whole report, but we encourage architects, when you're working with appraisers, especially if you're working on a green building, you're concerned that the building may not get fully valued by the appraiser, encourage them to read this report. There's a 2-page summary. It's all on our website, imt.org, available for free download. And because it's published by the Appraisal Institute, it's sort of quasi-official guidance to appraisers on what are best practices for valuing these buildings.
And it may be in a language terminology that they will speak to what they need from a building, because I know that's part of the breakdown of the dialogue of how to translate it between the two factions. Exactly.
And so it could be valuable for architects to peruse it, to understand how to speak the language of an appraiser. Whoever's talking to the appraiser, if you're not talking their language, you're sort of swimming upstream. Other initiatives that we have worked on to try and increase the value of green building and energy efficiency are Energy Star benchmarking laws. And you have these laws in place now in New York City and Washington, D.C., and California, and the state of Washington, and Austin, Texas. And actually yesterday, the city of Philadelphia introduced a law. And these laws require that buildings measure themselves on a scale of 1 to 100. How energy efficient are they compared to similar buildings around the country?
And is it buildings above a certain square footage, or is it any building, existing building, or new?
This is all about large existing buildings. And of course, new buildings become existing buildings once they're built.
Right.
And part of this is to create a feedback loop for architects, so that when an architect is designing a building, architects increasingly are focused on making their buildings more energy efficient, but they lack feedback. Okay, I designed it well, it energy modeled really well, but how well is it really doing in operations? Well, this provides that feedback loop so architects can hear back, are they actually achieving their goal of building energy efficient buildings that are actually energy efficient in operations and not just in the design, and learn from it and learn continuously. Okay, this building modeled really well, but it didn't perform quite as well as I had hoped. What can I do next time in terms of designing it differently, or how can I communicate better with the operators or the tenants? Those are important players as well, and we want the architects, the engineers, the tenants, the operators all working together to the common goal of more energy efficient buildings.
So this legislation that's setting the benchmarking, is that putting the responsibility on the owner and operator to collect that data?
That's right. The operator has to collect all the energy consumption data from all the meters, including the tenant meters, put it into this free online software that's provided by EPA, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star program, and they get this 1 to 100 rating back. They click a button, that rating gets transmitted to the city. In some cases, in New York City, for instance, that rating becomes public. That 1 to 100 rating for all these big buildings is out there for the world to see. So it's shining a brighter spotlight on building energy performance, on design, and we think it will result in a bigger premium for green and energy efficient buildings, a greater demand for good energy efficient design, and more work for architects. In fact, we have already written case studies of firms that are staffing up to meet the need for more energy efficiency as a consequence of the New York law, which hasn't even fully entered into effect. The government buildings, you can see all their ratings, but the private buildings, their ratings won't be shared publicly on the web until September. Okay. But already you see firms staffing up to meet that demand.
And you'll see this do you think it's going to be a ripple effect? Cities across the country are just going to keep adding this, not just big dateline cities, but smaller ones as well?
Yes. It's likely to start more in the usual suspects, the bigger cities, and some of the small cities that are on the cutting edge here. But we view this as very much like the LEED mandates that sort of swept the country. Lots and lots of cities either required that private buildings be LEED, or they required that their own buildings be LEED. Right. This looks like it's following a similar path. It's viewed as a very successful policy by cities. They're now competing to see who can be more green, to see who can have the better policies, and it looks to be sort of the next big thing for energy efficiency in large buildings.
It seems like it's going to open up a great amount of work that'll be done. Do you think it'll drive a lot of retrofits and renovations as people start to see these scores and they'll want to improve?
In fact, I think what you're going to see, in most cases, the laws require that you rate the building and then you share the rating with the city, and then there's a year before it becomes public. And in that year, if somebody rates their building and they realize it's not a very good rating, we think they're going to scramble to improve the operations, to do the retrofits, to hire architects to make the buildings better. And this will also provide architects a long-term role, not just in the design of the buildings, but in being a consultant to help in improving the operations and the retrofits over the lifespan of the building, and taking all the good work that goes into that design, into the BIM, into the energy modeling, and not treating it as just a one-time thing that ends when the building gets its C of O, but treating it as a living document, a living source of knowledge to make our buildings operate better.
Right, so that rating is not just a one-time thing, that you can constantly improve on it.
That's right. It's, in most of these cities, you're rating every year, and so it's all based on how much energy did you use in the last year. And so,
Okay.
retrofits, improved operations, all of that will reflect well on your rating.
Great, so it seems like there's a lot of stuff for people to keep up on, and I know IMT is a great resource, and your website, again, is...
IMT.org.
And I know there's a lot of case studies if people want to check that out for more info.
Great.
Great, thanks, Cliff.
Thank you very much, Katie.
Thank you.